I remember the way he looked at me that morning, like I was nothing. Just a speck of dirt on his $800 shoes. I was mopping the marble lobby floor, quiet as always, when he stepped out of the elevator and sneered. "Don't you people know how to stay out of the way?" Those 5 words. That tone. That pause before, "you people." It told me everything I needed to know about the man in the tailored suit with the platinum pen clipped to his pocket. I've seen all types in this building over the years. The suits who walk past you like you don't exist. The ones who forget your name the second you're not holding a mop. But this man, this CEO, he took it to another level. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every morning while I cleaned their floors, I was watching, listening, waiting, because one day they were going to learn something they never expected, and it started with him. My name is Luther Daniels, and I've been a janitor at Grant Pierce Corporate Plaza for almost 20 years. A skyscraper of glass and gold in the middle of downtown, home to law firms, hedge funds, tech startups, and egos big enough to cast shadows even on sunny days. Most folks pass me by with a quick nod, maybe a morning if they're in a good mood. I don't mind. My job is to keep things clean, not to be seen. And that's how I've survived here. Low profile. No trouble. I take pride in my work. My mama always said, if you're gonna do a job, even if it's scrubbing toilets, you do it with dignity. I carried that with me every day. My uniform pressed. My shoes shined. My cart organized. Then Cameron Slade showed up. CEO of a tech firm on the 23rd floor. Mid-30s, white, cocky, inherited his father's millions and started calling himself self-made after 2 app launches. He strutted through the lobby like he owned the air we breathed. First week in the building, he didn't even acknowledge me. Second week, he nearly tripped on my mop handle and cursed loud enough to make the receptionist flinch. Third week, he made sure everyone knew he wasn't comfortable with the cleaning staff being around during business hours. He never used my name. He just called me Janitor. It was a Thursday morning when things exploded. I was buffing the lobby floor before the lunch rush. Same routine as always. I'd placed the yellow caution sign, even looped the area off with red ribbon like they trained us. Cameron stormed out of the elevator with 2 junior executives trailing behind him, clearly in the middle of a big pitch. And he saw me, saw the ribbon, saw the buffer, saw me in uniform. "Are you kidding me with this?" he snapped, pointing. "Is this amateur hour?" I straightened up and said calmly, "Just 5 more minutes, sir. Safety protocol. Wet surface." He waved his hand like I was a fly. "No. Move. Now." One of the executives muttered, "Shouldn't we wait? Do you want to walk into a client meeting with this nonsense going on? It smells like chemicals and old rags. What kind of impression does this make?" I unplugged the buffer quietly, about to wheel it away, when he took it further. In front of the building manager. In front of his staff. In front of the lobby camera. People like this shouldn't be seen, let alone heard. He's lucky we even let them work in buildings like this. People like this. He didn't whisper it. He didn't hide it. He said it slow, cold, with poison. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The building manager, Mr. Hallman, stepped forward awkwardly, stammering, "Luther has worked here a long time, Mr. Slade. He follows all protocols." But Slade didn't care. He just brushed past me like I was a piece of furniture. And that's when I saw her. Avery, the young intern from the legal office. Watching from the mezzanine. Her phone in her hand. Her mouth slightly open. She'd seen it all. That night, I stayed late. Something in me had cracked. Not out of rage, but out of memory. I kept hearing my grandson's voice asking, "Why do you still work there, Grandpa?" And I kept answering the same way, because sometimes it's not just about cleaning floors. Sometimes, it's about being where you need to be, at the right time. I stood by the window on the 24th floor after hours. My keys give me access to most levels. Looked out at the skyline. Thought about everything I'd seen over the years in that building. Affairs, insider trading, quiet generosity, silent suffering. I'd seen it all. And Slade. He was just another loud storm passing through. But something was different now. The next morning, things escalated. Slade demanded I be reassigned to a lower building. Said I was disruptive. Said my presence was unprofessional. That clients shouldn't see cleaning staff during business hours. It's bad optics. The request went to the regional facilities director. And that's when the wheels began to turn. 3 days passed. I was reassigned to the underground parking and sublevel storage. No sunlight. No people. Just oil stains, rats, and echoes. But I didn't protest. Because I knew something Slade didn't. Every Friday, a board meeting was held in Suite 2600. The suite with frosted windows and a private elevator. A place most people assumed belonged to some obscure law firm. But it didn't. That office. That elevator. That floor. It belonged to him. And he was coming in that morning. I made sure to be seen. Mopping near the garage elevators when the dark car rolled in. Security flanked both sides, and a tall man in a dark gray suit stepped out. He paused when he saw me, gave a small smile, nodded once. I nodded back. He didn't say my name, but his eyes did. That afternoon, there was a commotion in the lobby. Slade was pacing, shouting into his phone. Apparently, the lease renewal for his company had been delayed, some kind of issue with building ownership. They can't delay this, he barked into the phone. We're the biggest tech client they have. We're on 23 floors. He slammed his phone down, just as the elevator doors opened. And he stepped out. Tall, black, impeccably dressed. Surrounded by quiet authority. Malcolm Reyes. Founder of Reyes Development Holdings. The man who owns the building. Every eye turned. Slade straightened his blazer and approached, hand outstretched. Mr. Reyes. Didn't expect to see you here. Big fan of your work. Reyes didn't shake his hand. Instead, he looked at me. Standing quietly at the side with my mop and bucket. And then looked back at Slade. I heard there was a problem, Reyes said. Slade laughed nervously. Oh no, not at all. Just some miscommunication. We love it here. Minor staffing issue is all. One of the janitors, bit of an attitude, but we're handling it. Reyes raised an eyebrow. Attitude? Yes. You know how some of these folks get when you hold them accountable. Reyes turned to me. Luther, he said, would you mind joining us upstairs? Slade blinked. You know him. Reyes's tone sharpened. He's family. Slade went pale. And then everything shifted. As the elevator doors closed behind us, I stood beside Malcolm Reyes in silence. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I told my daughter not to marry that fool, he added with a chuckle. But she gave me a gift anyway. We stepped into the private suite on the top floor. And for the first time in years, I sat at the boardroom table, not to clean it, but to join the meeting. Slade didn't know it yet, but the man he'd shamed was about to decide his fate. The storm clouds had settled over downtown Chicago, but inside the Sterling building, tension still buzzed like static in the air. After being publicly humiliated by Bradford Sterling, the smug, sharp-suited CEO who strutted through the halls as if he were royalty, Emmett Parker quietly resumed his janitorial duties. No one said a word, but everyone saw. They saw the cruel words. The thrown coffee cup. The false accusations about laziness and affirmative action hires. And they saw Emmett simply bow his head and keep working. But what no one saw was what happened next. Later that night, long after the last employee had gone home, Emmett stood alone in the executive lobby, mop in hand, staring out at the twinkling skyline. His reflection looked back at him in the glass. A tired man in a faded blue uniform. But his eyes held stories that no one in this building could imagine. He slowly opened the bottom of his supply cart, revealing a small, old leather-bound notebook tucked beneath the rags and gloves. It was cracked with age. Faint gold lettering on the front read, "The Parker Trust, Personal Ledger." Emmett sat on a bench in the lobby and opened it. Inside were signatures, receipts, letters of ownership, the building's original blueprints. And at the back, something that hadn't been touched in over 12 years, a handwritten agreement signed by his late wife and the original developer of the building. A promise, a gift, a silent stake in the building, one that had remained in trust, under legal protection, for their son, Miles. His hand trembled as he closed the book. The time was drawing near, not for revenge, but for truth. The next day, Bradford strutted into the lobby again, as if nothing had happened. Emmett was buffing the floor near the elevator, head bowed, trying to remain invisible. "Still here?" Bradford sneered, adjusting his cufflinks. "Yes, sir," Emmett replied calmly. Bradford stopped and looked him over. "Do you even know what real work is? I built this company from the ground up while people like you just sweep up behind it." Emmett said nothing. The elevator dinged open. Bradford turned to step in, but as he did, a young woman in a pantsuit stepped out, holding a thick legal folder. "Mr. Sterling," she said, looking confused. "We need to talk. It's about the lease." He brushed her off. "No time. Schedule it with Karen. I was told you'd want to see this now. It's urgent." Emmett slowly straightened up, watching them. His heart beat faster. "Give it to me," Bradford barked, snatching the folder. As the elevator doors closed behind him, Emmett heard him mutter, "Worthless paperwork. Probably some tenant complaint." He had no idea. The paperwork wasn't from a tenant. It was from the building's majority trust holder. And it had questions about recent renovations that were made without approval. The next few days, the office buzzed with confusion. Bradford began snapping at employees, paranoid, double-checking documents. Something was wrong, and he could feel it, but didn't know what. Maintenance requests were going unanswered. The Wi-Fi randomly cut out. Even the espresso machine in the executive lounge broke, sending him into a fury. On the fourth morning, as Emmett changed a light bulb in the break room, he overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. Two executives were whispering near the coffee machine. "Sterling's trying to push out that non-profit on the 7th floor." "You mean the literacy center?" "Yeah. Says their rent's too low and he wants to turn it into a crypto firm's satellite office." Emmett's hand tightened around the bulb. The literacy center, he and his late wife had helped fund its creation years ago. It was one of her final wishes before passing. Later that night, Emmett called a number he hadn't used in over a year. "Miles," he said softly. "Dad, are you okay? It's time." There was silence. Then, "You sure? I've let too much slide already. Your mama's legacy. I need your help." 2 days later, Bradford was meeting with lawyers in the conference room when his assistant nervously knocked on the door. "There's a visitor here. Says he's Mr. Parker's son." "Who?" Bradford asked. "Emmett, the janitor." Bradford scoffed. "What is this, take your kid to work day?" She hesitated. "He's wearing a suit. He has legal documents. And a representative from Coleman Realty is with him." At the sound of that name, Bradford stood up abruptly. Coleman Realty wasn't just any firm. They handled multi-million-dollar commercial property transactions. And if they were here, it meant someone important had sent them. He walked out of the conference room and stopped dead in his tracks. Standing by the glass reception desk was a tall, well-dressed young man in his early 30s. Polished shoes, tailored navy suit, a quiet confidence in his posture. He bore a striking resemblance to. "Hello, Mr. Sterling," the young man said, extending a hand. "I'm Miles Parker. It's nice to finally meet you." Bradford didn't shake it. He looked over to Emmett, who stood quietly beside his son, no longer in uniform. Bradford's voice was a growl. "What is this? What game are you playing?" Miles calmly opened the briefcase. "No game. My family has a trust stake in this building. My mother's name is on the foundational documents. We've been silent partners for years." He slid over a copy of the ownership document, the same document Emmett had held in his notebook. "You've been violating lease terms, engaging in unapproved renovations, and attempting to remove non-profit tenants that were protected under legacy clauses." Bradford's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Miles continued, his voice steady. "We could have handled this through attorneys. But I thought you should know who my father really is." Bradford turned toward Emmett. You've been spying on me?" "No," Emmett said quietly. "I've been watching. There's a difference." In the days that followed, a quiet reckoning began. Bradford was hit with a formal notice of lease violations. Several tenants filed complaints against his company. The media began to sniff around, catching wind of a potential ethics investigation. Investors started pulling back. One evening, Emmett was sweeping the same marble lobby where he'd once been humiliated. This time, employees greeted him with nods. Some even smiled. But the moment that moved him most was when a young black intern approached him near the elevator. "Mr. Parker?" she asked nervously. I just wanted to say thank you. I saw what happened. You didn't say anything, but you changed everything." He gave her a gentle smile. Sometimes, silence speaks loudest. That night, he returned to the rooftop garden, a space no one used anymore. It had been his wife's favorite spot. As he looked out at the stars, Miles joined him. "You sure you don't want to press charges? The harassment, the threats, everything he did." "I'm sure," Emmett said. "But we're not done yet." Miles nodded. "I've got the financials on Sterling. We found something." "What kind of something?" "Misused company funds. Shell companies. Offshore transfers. He's been siphoning from the company, and from the building's shared maintenance account." Emmett looked over sharply. "He stole from the building?" Miles opened a tablet and turned the screen toward his father. "It gets worse. He's leveraged the company's future on a private project. If it fails, he'll drag everyone down with him." Bradford, unaware of how quickly the noose was tightening, was on the phone late at night in his corner office. "I don't care what it takes. Patch the leaks, silence the tenants, and block any media request. We're going to IPO by Q3 or die trying." He hung up, staring out at the city. In his mind, he was still untouchable. But outside, in the reflection of the window, a shadow moved, quiet and steady. Miles stood by the conference room with a briefcase in hand, watching through the glass. He tapped a message on his phone. "Ready." Downstairs, Emmett received the message. He reached into his supply cart, pulled out the old leather notebook one last time, and whispered, "Let's bring it home, baby." The next morning, Sterling Tower employees arrived to a scene of quiet chaos. Security had been posted near the elevators. Legal documents were being passed between offices. And a large white board had been rolled into the main lobby. On it were projected files, financial charts, names, shell corporations, signatures. At the top, the words, "Sterling's Secret Empire, an internal audit by the Parker Trust." Bradford stormed in from the garage, only to be blocked at the front entrance. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. Emmett appeared from behind the crowd. This time, wearing a tailored gray vest, not a janitor's uniform. "You said I didn't know what real work was," he said softly. "So I figured I'd remind you how this building was built, and who really owns it." Bradford's jaw clenched. "You can't do this." "I already did." The front doors opened again. and in walked a federal agent with a badge. "Bradford Sterling," she said. "We need to talk." The crowd gasped. Emmett stepped aside, letting them pass. Bradford's eyes darted, his breath rapid. "Wait, this is a mistake. This is a setup." Emmett leaned in close. "No, Bradford. This is justice." The next Monday at Lancaster Tech dawned unusually tense. The staff buzzed with rumors. Why had Bryce stormed out of the board meeting? Who was the real building owner? And why did the janitor suddenly have an aura about him no one could ignore? James showed up at 5:45 a.m. Just like always, mop in hand and silent determination in his eyes. He never said a word about what had happened, nor about the hush that fell over the team when he passed. But Bryce? He was unraveling. In his corner office, Bryce tossed his second coffee of the morning onto the carpet in frustration. His assistant, Clarissa, jumped back. "Another dead end," Bryce snapped. "The ownership is under an anonymous LLC that traces back to a blind trust. No name, no face. Just this Carter Holdings Incorporated. I don't know who this damn Carter is, but I swear I'll find him." Clarissa hesitated. "Should I contact the legal team again?" "No. I don't want legal. I want leverage." Bryce stood by the window, glaring down at the lobby. "Everything's slipping," he muttered. "The board's nervous, stock dipped 2% last week, and now some ghost owns the building I practically built." He slammed his fist into the wall. "And don't think I haven't noticed the way people are treating that damn janitor now. Like he's royalty." That same day, Malcolm Carter walked into a quiet cafe 2 blocks away, dressed in a plain button-down and jeans. No bodyguards. No designer suit. He sat down across from board member Evelyn Maris. "You asked for this meeting," she said cautiously. Malcolm smiled politely. "I figured it was time we met, off the record." Evelyn tilted her head. "You're Carter Holdings?" "I am." Her eyes widened. "So, all this time, you've been watching," Malcolm finished calmly. "Monitoring what kind of leadership controls my tenants. You're one of the good ones, Evelyn. But Bryce." He paused, letting the silence say more than words. Evelyn leaned in. "Does Bryce know?" "No. But he's getting close. Too close. Which means it's time to speed things up." Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. "You're going to remove him, aren't you?" Malcolm's face didn't change. "I'm going to let him remove himself." Back at the office, Bryce held a secret meeting with 2 of his most ruthless allies, Max Stratton and Debbie Vale. The 3 of them had built the company's aggressive acquisition strategy. "I want dirt on this Carter Holdings firm," Bryce ordered. "I don't care how deep you have to dig. Get me names, associates, shell companies, lawyers, janitors, anything." Debbie blinked. "Janitors? Yes. Especially that one. James Carter." "Sir, with all due respect, why are we going after a janitor?" Bryce turned slowly, eyes burning. "Because ever since I humiliated that man, weird things have been happening. People act different around him." The security chief started greeting him. I saw the CFO shake his hand. "My instincts tell me he's not just some mop pusher." Max laughed. "What are you saying, he's some undercover billionaire?" Bryce didn't laugh. He stared. "I don't know what he is. But I'll find out." Days later, a surprising email hit the executive inboxes. A company-wide respect and diversity seminar, mandatory for all senior staff. Organized by the mysterious Building Owners Committee. "Is this some kind of joke?" Bryce growled. The seminar was scheduled for Friday morning. Bryce planned to skip it, until he was informed that any executive who didn't attend would face a breach of lease penalty. His face turned white. "Lease? Since when does the building owner mandate HR seminars?" The reply was curt, "Since your lease gives them power to do so." And so, at 9 a.m., Bryce, along with 28 other executives, filed into the conference hall on the top floor, a floor Bryce had never been allowed to modify. Inside stood a figure at the podium, back turned. The crowd fell silent as the speaker slowly turned around. It was James Carter, dressed in a crisp, tailored navy suit. Gasps rippled through the room. Bryce stood, his face contorted. What the hell is this? What is this man doing here? James smiled faintly. I'm here to share a few words about humility, respect, and consequences. The audience leaned forward. I've cleaned these halls for 22 years. I've seen every executive rise and fall. I've seen interns become VPs. And I've seen arrogance rot the strongest foundations. His voice remained calm, measured, timeless. You never know who's watching, or who's in the stall, or who pays the bills when you think you're untouchable. Bryce's fists clenched. You think this is funny, Carter? You're a janitor. Yes, James said, walking toward him. A janitor who raised a son with dignity. A son who happens to own this building. And most of the land under it. Dead silence. Bryce's breath caught. James nodded toward the back door. A new figure entered. Sharp suit. Quiet confidence. It was Malcolm. Gasps echoed again. You. Bryce whispered. You're his son? Malcolm nodded slowly. I bought this building 3 years ago, Mr. Lancaster. And I've been watching ever since. Bryce staggered backward. But why not say anything? Why this circus? Because, Malcolm said, voice still calm, men like you don't learn from words. You learn from exposure. You learn when the power you abuse gets stripped away by the people you looked down on. Later that evening, Bryce sat alone in his office, blinds drawn, whiskey untouched. His phone buzzed. One message. Emergency board meeting. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Attendance required. He opened it. Attached was an anonymous letter, sealed with the logo of Carter Holdings. He clicked the file. A recording began to play. This is audio surveillance from the executive floor. Then, his own voice, drunk, cruel, mocking James, mocking Malcolm, making racial slurs from months ago during a private dinner with Max and Debbie. His face drained of blood. Outside his office, 2 security guards were silently waiting. The screen faded to black. Narrator. Bryce thought he had all the power. But in his pride, he forgot the first rule of empires. They fall hardest when the foundation cracks. But tomorrow's board meeting? It won't just be about Bryce's behavior. It'll reveal something even darker. And someone else in the company has been hiding something far worse than racism. The tension inside the boardroom could be sliced with a blade. Robert King sat at the head of the table, no longer in his janitor's uniform. He wore a tailored navy blue suit, his posture upright, eyes focused, hands steady. The CEO, Preston Maddox, sat at the opposite end, his smirk now wiped clean, replaced by something between disbelief and dread. Preston looked around the room, waiting for someone to laugh, to reveal this was some elaborate joke. But no one did. Lillian, the assistant who had quietly admired Robert all these years, stood behind him like a loyal guardian. The legal team sat stone-faced. And then there was Malcolm, Robert's son, the majority owner of the building and CEO of the real estate conglomerate that leased it out. And Preston, the man who had just days ago called Robert a worthless relic with a mop, was now discovering that mop had more power behind it than he ever could have imagined. "You're not serious," Preston muttered. This has to be some stunt." Robert finally spoke, calm but commanding. "You think just because I was sweeping floors, I didn't see what was happening in these walls? You think that just because I was quiet, I was blind?" Preston chuckled nervously. "You were just a janitor. 4 years." "I was," Robert agreed, folding his hands. "And I did it with pride. Because hard work, real work, has never been beneath me. But while you were barking orders and making enemies, I was building alliances. Watching. Listening. Lillian stepped forward, placing a thick file on the table. We've reviewed your emails, Mr. Maddox, and your misuse of company funds. And we have some concerning evidence regarding your conduct with junior staff. The color drained from Preston's face. Malcolm interjected. This company has lost millions under your leadership. But you covered it up with flashy presentations and short-term wins. Not anymore. Preston's voice was low now, almost trembling. What do you want from me? Robert leaned forward slightly. I want you to see the people you've stepped on all these years. Not just me. Every single person who walked into this building and felt small because of your arrogance. Preston stood suddenly, slamming his fist on the table. You can't do this. You have no idea who I know, who's in my pocket. Malcolm didn't even blink. You might want to check your contacts again. The board's been briefed. They're no longer in your pocket, they're in ours. The air went dead silent. 1 week earlier, Malcolm had flown in under the radar, per Robert's request, quietly meeting with the building's board of directors, shareholders, and key partners. The evidence against Preston had been mounting for months, but without the right leverage, it had been too risky to act. But Robert had the leverage. Years of quiet observation, collected documents, whispered testimonies from intimidated employees, and a sterling reputation no one could question. Together, father and son had crafted a plan. Not for revenge, but for justice. You sure you want to go through with this, Dad? Malcolm had asked in a quiet moment over breakfast. You could have retired years ago. Lived a quiet life. No one would have blamed you. Robert had smiled. This isn't about me anymore. It's about the young man Preston fired last month for bringing his daughter to work after her babysitter bailed. It's about the single mom who he humiliated in front of the entire floor. It's about everyone who had to swallow their pride to keep their job. Malcolm had nodded. Then let's show him what real power looks like. Back to present. Preston sat frozen as the HR director entered the boardroom, papers in hand. Mr. Maddox, as of this moment, you're being placed on indefinite administrative leave pending a full investigation. Please collect your things. Wait. Preston turned to Robert. This is personal. You're making it personal. Robert stood, slowly walking toward him. No. You made it personal the day you looked me in the eye and said I was nothing. I just finally decided to show you who I am. As security entered the room, Preston's protests grew louder. You think this is over? You think I'll go down that easily? But no one listened. Not this time. The next day, the building buzzed with whispers. Employees exchanged looks, their usual tension replaced by awe. Word had spread that Preston had been removed, and that the janitor was no ordinary janitor. Robert walked the halls as he always did, only now heads turned in admiration instead of dismissal. Lillian approached him with a soft smile. They're calling you the quiet storm in the office. Robert chuckled. Storms make a mess. I'm just here to clean up. At that moment, Malcolm joined them, papers in hand. We're officially taking over operations. But there's something else you should know. He handed Robert a document. It was a deed. What is this? Robert asked. It's the entire block. The foundation's been funneling funds into community development. And now, you're the managing director. You get to decide who gets to stay, what gets built, and how it's run. Robert stared at the paper, speechless. But why me? He asked. Malcolm's voice softened. Because no one sees a city the way you do, Dad. You've walked its hallways, cleaned its cracks, heard the cries no one else noticed. You've always seen its soul. Now you can protect it. Robert's eyes welled up with quiet pride. Then let's build something that can't be torn down by people like Preston. Elsewhere, in a dark office, Preston Maddox sat in a dimly lit room, scrolling furiously through legal documents. His contacts were disappearing. His assets frozen. But his eyes burned with something deeper than anger, hatred. He opened a file labeled King. Inside were surveillance photos, old news clippings, and something else, a decades-old sealed envelope. He pulled it open. Inside was a legal document with Robert King's name and the words, "Confidential, former FBI intelligence asset." Preston leaned back, stunned. "What the hell were you really doing all those years, janitor?" His phone buzzed with a private message. "Unknown sender, want to take the King family down? I can help. Meet me. Midnight. No names." Preston's eyes lit with dark intrigue. Later that night, Robert stood alone in the lobby of the building he once cleaned, gazing at a portrait being hung on the wall. It was a tribute to the ones who build in silence. Lillian stepped beside him. "You did it." "No," he replied softly. "We just started." As he turned, his phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from an old contact, someone from his past life. The message read, "We've intercepted chatter. You may be in danger. Watch your six." Robert's eyes narrowed. The past wasn't buried. And now, it was coming for his family. Preston stepped into an abandoned parking garage at midnight. A figure waited in the shadows. "You said you had something that could destroy him," Preston said. The figure tossed him a manila folder. Inside were black and white photos, Robert in military uniform, next to high-level political figures, standing at undisclosed locations. Preston's voice trembled. "What is this?" The figure spoke with a gravelly voice. Robert King wasn't just a janitor. He wasn't just a father. He was part of a program that doesn't officially exist. And someone wants him silenced. Preston's lips curled into a wicked smile. "Then let's finish what he started, by destroying everything he loves." The figure nodded once. "But first, we go after his son." The morning sun poured over the glossy skyscrapers of Midtown like golden syrup, thick and radiant. Inside one of those buildings, turmoil brewed in hushed boardrooms, whispered hallways, and the furious click-clack of stilettos and loafers on the marble floors. Ever since the scandal broke, since Samuel Carter had been unmasked not just as a janitor, but as the secret landlord of the very building that housed Gregory Hargrove's once proud firm, chaos had consumed every corner of Hargrove and Blake Financial. But Gregory Hargrove wasn't going down without a fight. He sat in his private office, a room bigger than most apartments in the city, surrounded by mahogany shelves and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on the world like a king surveying his crumbling kingdom. His eyes were bloodshot, hair disheveled, and a bottle of whiskey half hidden beneath a stack of folders. "Where's the damage control team?" he barked into his phone. "I don't care if they're in Dubai. Fly them back. Now." His empire was crumbling. Stock prices were slipping, investors were panicking, and social media was flooded with hashtags. Hashtag justice for Samuel, hashtag humble landlord, hashtag end corporate racism. Major news outlets ran segments on Samuel's story, how a black janitor had quietly owned the building his racist boss ruled with an iron fist. Samuel's story wasn't just a local scandal, it had become a national conversation. And Gregory? He was the villain. Outside the office walls, things had changed. Employees who once feared Gregory now whispered openly in corners. HR was flooded with complaints from past employees who had endured years of microaggressions and outright abuse. Anonymous exposés flooded Reddit threads and watchdog blogs. But Samuel, he had vanished. After his explosive reveal in the boardroom and the storm of public support that followed, Samuel Carter had retreated from the spotlight. No press interviews. No social media. No sightings. It was as if the man who had shaken the corporate tower to its core had melted back into the shadows. Until today. Meanwhile, across the city, inside a humble cafe in Harlem, a quiet storm brewed. Samuel Carter, dressed in his signature navy blue janitor's shirt and black slacks, sipped a steaming cup of coffee. Beside him sat Julian Carter, his son, the real estate genius and majority shareholder of Carter Holdings. "What you're planning," Samuel said quietly, "is dangerous." Julian looked at his father, eyes ablaze. "He humiliated you, Dad. Lied. Threatened you. He tried to ruin you." Samuel set his cup down with a calm resolve. "I don't want to destroy the man. I want him to understand. I want him to look in the mirror and feel the weight of what he's done." Julian leaned forward. "We've given him time. Time to apologize. To do the right thing. He's doubled down. Fired good people. Attacked our holdings. Tried to smear us." Samuel looked out the window, his reflection in the glass blending with the city outside. "Then we'll show him what real power looks like. The kind that doesn't need to shout." Julian nodded slowly. "Tomorrow's the auction." Samuel didn't smile. He just whispered, "Then let the truth finish what it started." The next day, at Financial District Courthouse, the room buzzed with tension. Reporters crowded the back. Flashbulbs popped. The foreclosure auction of Hargrove and Blake's prized Manhattan headquarters was underway, Gregory's last and most desperate move to salvage liquidity. "Lot number 118, the auctioneer called out. 42-story commercial tower on Fifth Avenue. Opening bid, $25 million. Gregory, seated with his CFO and a high-powered legal team, looked confident for the first time in weeks. He had secretly arranged for an anonymous shell corporation to win the bid and lease it back to his firm, a quiet rescue plan. No one would ever know. But as the bidding began, a new voice pierced the room. $30 million. Heads turned. In the back stood Julian Carter, impeccably dressed, flanked by two attorneys. Whispers rippled. Gregory's face paled. $35 million, barked Gregory's representative, scrambling to match. Julian didn't flinch. 40. 42. 45. It kept rising. Tension cracked like glass. At 50 million, the room was breathless. Then Julian raised a finger. 60. Gasps echoed. Gregory stood, rage painting his face red. "You're bluffing. You don't have." The auctioneer silenced him. "Any further bids?" Silence. "Sold. To Mr. Julian Carter." Cameras flashed like lightning. Hours later, at Hargrove and Blake headquarters, employees gathered in the lobby, watching flat screens mounted on the walls. The news was everywhere. Julian Carter, CEO of Carter Holdings, acquires Hargrove and Blake Tower. Then came the email. From Julian Carter. Subject: Building access and management changes. In light of recent events, Hargrove and Blake's lease is now under direct review. All executives are to vacate their offices until further notice. A third-party ethics and equity audit will be conducted, and employee complaints from the past decade are being formally reopened. No further communication should be made with media. JC. The building erupted in whispers. Some clapped. Some stared in shock. But all eyes turned toward one man, Gregory Hargrove. He stood frozen in the hallway as security approached. "Mr. Hargrove," the taller guard said gently, "we've been instructed to escort you out." "You can't be serious," Gregory stammered. "I built this place." The guard didn't flinch. "Sir, you no longer own the building. Please come with us." As Gregory was walked through the halls he once ruled, employees parted to let him pass. Some lowered their eyes. Others stared directly, unflinching. A few took photos. But standing at the elevator was Samuel Carter, still wearing his janitor's uniform, still holding a mop. Gregory stopped. They locked eyes. "I knew it," Gregory muttered. "You planned this. You played me." Samuel tilted his head. "No, Mr. Hargrove. You played yourself." Then the elevator dinged. Gregory was gone. Weeks passed. The tower transformed. Samuel wasn't just a symbolic figure anymore. He was appointed head of facilities and community engagement, implementing fair hiring policies and mentorship programs for underrepresented youth. The janitorial staff received raises. Employee complaints were heard. Diversity training was mandatory. And Gregory? Disgraced, he filed lawsuits. Appeared on desperate interviews trying to reframe his downfall. But no one bought the act anymore. Until one day, something shifted. In a dimly lit bar on the edge of Queens, Gregory sat hunched over a drink, eyes hollow. Across from him sat a stranger, a slick man in a tailored gray suit with icy eyes and a deep, smooth voice. "I've been following your situation," the man said. "Unfortunate, what they did to you." Gregory laughed bitterly. "They didn't do anything. I let my guard down. I got too comfortable." The man tapped his glass. "That janitor, that family, they embarrassed you." Gregory tensed. "You don't know the half of it." The man leaned in. "Maybe, but I do know how to build things. And how to destroy them." Gregory looked up slowly. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Let's just say I represent people who don't like seeing their kind rise above their station." Gregory's eyes narrowed. "I can help you get your empire back," the man continued. "But it won't be clean." Gregory sipped his drink. "I'm done playing clean." The man slid a flash drive across the table. "Then you'll want to see what I've uncovered about Julian and Samuel." Gregory picked it up, fingers trembling. Elsewhere, in Julian's office, Julian sat reviewing development plans when his assistant burst in, face pale. "Sir, we've been hacked." "What?" "Internal files, emails, phone logs. Someone's leaking, and they're spinning it like your father manipulated property deals. They're saying you used him as a racial shield." Julian stood, heart pounding. On the screen, headlines flashed. "The truth about Carter Holdings? Samuel Carter, hero or pawn?" Leaked emails suggest deeper agenda. Julian grabbed his phone, calling security. "Where's my father?" The assistant swallowed. "That's the other thing, he's missing." In a night, empty street. Rain poured as a shadowy black SUV sat idling near an alley. Inside, Samuel Carter sat bound to a chair in a dimly lit basement. A voice echoed from the dark. It was the man from the bar. "You shouldn't have messed with giants, Samuel. You may own the building." A hand gripped Samuel's shoulder. "But now we own the ground beneath it."